Rise, eviction night dies, halting hex rise, eviction night dies. I mean, that is just such trash. And how's it going, everybody? It is Friday, so welcome to another Fan Friday. Oh my god, yes. So instead of bringing you the usual weekly recap, I thought that I might switch it up a bit again. You know, I really wanted to talk about Paul because he has been the subject of conversation pretty much all week long. And so for all of the Paul fans out there, please know that this is not to shade your man or, you know, come for your boy, but I would like to just have like a little quick analysis of all of the things that I've been observing from Paul this season on Big Brother. So as you all know, Paul Abrahamian came into the Big Brother universe last season on season 18, and from right off the bat, he was given the archetype of the loud, zany, crazy, in-your-face, big personality guy. He was another Zach Rance. He was just someone that was just gonna be full of life and energy. And of course, that archetype, you know, is targeted first. They always are. I mean, you have your Jaces, you have your Zach Rances that have always been, like, they always find themselves on the block and in hot water, just because of who they are. And while that seemingly may have been a bad thing for weeks 1, 2, 3, pretty much for the entire time, it did give him the opportunity to seek the coveted spot of the underdog. And that, my friends, is where Team Paul begins. That is where people fall in love with him. That is when people will begin to root for him because they think that the odds are stacked against him. The summer progresses, Paul increasingly gets better at the game, and then it just, you know, it sparks a fire within a lot of the BB fandom. Everyone is throwing their eggs to him. They see him actually struggling to get to the top. They see him actually having to make moves, be risky, and put himself out there. And so when it came down to being in the final two with Nicole, whom a lot of the fans thought did not play as an aggressive game, as loud of a game, as they didn't see the same kind of passion and energy behind Nicole's game that they saw in Paul's. So when it gets down to that final two, of course a lot of people were going to be disappointed with the outcome. And so whenever a large group of people sees an injustice committed against an individual, that individual becomes the martyr. They get risen up on a pedestal. We praise them. They become the signal of the struggle of that season. And so that's where things get a little bit tricky. Now, I know I was not the only one that repeatedly tweeted at Big Brother and Robin Cass and whoever else saying, we do not want the veterans. We don't want coaches. We don't want vets. We don't want returnees. We don't, any way you slice it, we don't want any of the cake. But since Big Brother and Big Brother Production are pretty much the captains of the town of I don't give a hot diddly damn, they brought back... Ooh, James Hewling just liked my tweet. Anyway, they brought back Paul. They did it. And once again, as many times as people throw shade at production and all of that, saying we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it, there were a lot of people that were happy to see him come back. Once again, Paul didn't win his season. He was supposed to be the winner of that season and he didn't get it. So in many people's eyes, this was his second chance and he deserved every single moment of that second chance. But here's where things get dicey. You bring Paul back and then you automatically give him power in a week where there's supposedly no HOH. The friendship bracelets, while yes, they were true to his brand, I mean, it was a bit much in my opinion. But of course, the counter to that is that why bring him back in the first place, knowing he's going to be the only vet in there, knowing that he's going to be a target right off the bat. You got to give him something that's going to keep him safe for at least 1 week. So you know what? Fine. Make it rain with those friendship bracelets. Do what you got to do to make sure that Paul can at least get his footing in the game. But here's where things get dicier. Then you allow America to vote for a house guest to get 3 weeks of safety, when really, they only have information and a rapport with one of the house guests in the house so far. Of course, Paul wins that one as well, and, you know, to be honest, at the time when he won, I was like, you know what, fine. I mean, I think the friendship bracelets were enough, but you know what, give him the 3 weeks, that way we can at least see him on our television screen, and he at least, you know, he has a chance. He has a chance. So it's not so much about the 3 weeks. It's about what one chooses to do with those 3 weeks. I'm going to name a couple of positives about Paul's game in the first 3 weeks of Big Brother. He stuck with what he knows, being himself and owning his social game. He made sure that whoever he chose for those friendship bracelets were people that he thought that he could beat at any comp or any kind of vote. He did a good job at creating targets, even if the reasons that they were targets were completely true or completely false. He provides insight about the game that a lot of his alliance members will admire and look up to. And last but not least, he kept that bomb-ass beard. Like, let me tell you, that beard is a work of art. But herein lies the rubs. While a lot of the things that I listed were positives, a lot of them actually grew to be negatives as well. And of course, you could always make the argument that what's annoying to us might not necessarily be annoying to the other house guests, but I do think that it paints a broader scope of where his game could be headed. So it was amazing to watch Paul really create his empire in the first 3 weeks, but we also have to remember that that was done under the guise of his safety, and had it not been for that pendant of protection, he could have been on the block because of Cody. And that pendant not only kept him from being evicted, it also allowed him to play a different game, to be honest. He was allowed to say who his targets were out loud, he could really say anything that he wanted about the other house guests without fear of repercussions, and he was really able to just make the power moves that were necessary to get his targets out. In the Big Brother house, you are going to be addicted to power. I think that it's inevitable, especially if it's handed to you on a silver platter. And those that are surrounding you are going to be attracted to that power because that power to them means safety. Unless you're Dominique. So, watching everybody kind of mindlessly follow through with Paul's plans has become somewhat of an annoying and just not a very good game to watch. You want to see everybody fight for that 500k, you want to see people really claw their way to the end, and right now it seems like Paul's the only one putting in the legwork to get to the end. And while that's not necessarily Paul's fault, it does explain why there's so much of a grievance for his return. I think a lot of people kind of hit their last straw with Paul this week when it comes to everything pretty much relating with Dominique. The way I see it, Dominique kind of got herself in trouble this past week because of her show, and the fact that Cody, before he left the house, kind of put a mark on her and Mark by telling everyone else, hey, you know, these two people have been scheming together. So, of course, it was very easy for Paul to then go and make Dominique the target for this week, and since Alex, the puppy dog, is working with Paul, she went ahead and obliged him and named her and Jessica as a nominee. And while that's not necessarily the most frustrating part about it, of course there were a lot of people that were kind of disheartened to see Dominique's game kind of just go up in flames over something that seemed very minuscule. But you know, that wasn't necessarily the worst part for me. The worst part for me this week with Paul was something that he decided that he wanted to do at the veto ceremony. Now let me just start by saying this. This is not an attack on Paul's character. I do not believe that Paul is a racist. That's not my intent at all. I do, however, kind of just want to give a little more insight into why what he was planning on doing could be seen as something very, very insensitive. I think most of us know the historical implications of blackface and just how it's just not a you kind of want to steer clear of anything of the sort or anything that kind of could resemble it. And I think that's kind of where Paul went wrong. Something I always remember between Paul and Dominique was a conversation they had maybe about week 1, week 2. They were outside in the backyard, and Dominique was essentially sharing with Paul about how she was worried about giving off an edit, the angry black girl edit, and she just didn't want to appear that way on national television. I really appreciate what Paul said to her in response. He said, you know, I get it. I understand what you mean, and I sympathize with that. So, it's interesting to see that type of conversation transpire and really enjoy that kind of cultural exchange because above anything else, Big Brother has always been a social experiment. So, to many fans, it was a bit disheartening, to say the least, when you see Paul talking about wearing a black mask, using the term blackface, and of course, once again, I'm sure that is not what Paul meant, but someone who claims to be woke, who claims to be in the know, who claims to be culturally sensitive, you would think that maybe one little brain cell would spark off and be like, maybe this could be received poorly, maybe I shouldn't do this, even though that's not what I meant. And so you have that, and you add in the isolation that Dominique was receiving, and you add in all of the kind of really half-assed apologies that Paul would give to Dominique and then go and tell the rest of the house how passive she was, how mean she was. It just wasn't a good look overall. And I think that people need to remember that before they try and write this off as the race card or making Big Brother something that it's not, Big Brother is essentially a microcosm of life. So a lot of the things that you will see, whether it be outright blatant racism or just negligence or just insensitivity or just general lack of knowledge about a particular topic, that is going to permeate in that house. It's going to be self-reflective. So with that being said, of course, I was hoping that Dominique could kind of have a second wind and get this hex and kind of just show them what she was made of and have another chance to really give Paul a run for his money. I don't think that Paul is a horrible person. I don't think that he is a racist. I just think that he was ignorant about something that I did not expect him to be ignorant about. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, and especially in regards to this particular week on Big Brother. I think that it'll be interesting to see what Paul does with his game now that his immunity is up. Or is it not? Because Julie still never really confirmed that last night, so who even knows? Is he going to have enough gas to essentially run the house like he's been doing for the first 3 weeks? Or is his vulnerability going to catch up to him and someone might take that shot? I am genuinely interested in the rest of his legacy. And I just wanted to kind of offer maybe a different point of view than what someone might be used to seeing on their Twitter feed or on their Facebook feed or on their Reddit feed or whatever have you. I just wanted to talk about it here. Once again, all coming from a place of love, have no hate in my heart for anybody, and I honestly hope that this season can just continue to give us the drama that we've been wanting, just in the most respectful, carefree way possible. Anyways, that's it for me, folks. I will see you guys next week.